What's up, everyone? I think Sorcerer is one of the most fun and just visually exciting classes to play in Diablo 4. And I want to share with you my Zeus Thunder and Lightning build. This is my favorite build for just pure aesthetics and just fun playstyle. You charge in like a thunder god and see numbers flashing everywhere. And I am blasting through everything and it is so fun. So I want to share it with you. I'll talk through how you build it as you level up and then what it will look like when you're in the 50 plus and going into endgame. I won't say this build is perfect, but it's the most fun I've ever had on Sorcerer, and it will easily get you all the way to 70, tier 4 endgame without breaking a sweat. So how do you play it? This build, you pop ball lightning, but it's modified with the gravitational aspect. So it spins around us and then we teleport into the middle of a big pack. Everything gets sucked into us. We pop unstable currents, which is the ultimate, and then we just pump charged bolts. Enemies will be constantly stunned, constantly taking damage from about 4 to 5 different attacks, and there's so many combos that once one thing gets stunned, it triggers more bolts. Once the lightning bolts are charged, they stun again. Critical hits trigger constantly. Damage triggers criticals. Criticals trigger speed and damage, and there's just numbers everywhere. A lot of them are criticals, and it's just crazy. It has its weaknesses. It's not the most defensive. It's a little mana hungry, but the beauty of it is once you've got 2 balls of lightning spinning around you and you jump into a pack, everything will just start triggering. The balls will start stunning and that will trigger charged bolts, and charged bolts will spread and trigger more charged bolts and more lightning, and things will just spread and burn down all around you. So you just move to the next pack and it's great. It's so fun. So let's go over the best stats for this build. The number 1 stat you need is movement speed. To get from pack to pack super fast and get out of trouble, you're going to be looking for as much movement speed as possible. You're also going to be looking for a unique as well, which we'll talk about in the next part, which increases your crit the more movement speed you have. I think I have around 150 and 120 base speed already, but get as much as you can. Then you want attack speed. More attacks give more stuns, more crits, and more burst. We also enchant ball lightning as one of our enchantments, and its damage scales as 200% of our attack speed. So getting your attack speed super high and just going in with Arc Clash will trigger so much other things as well, which is really, really, really helpful. So you really want to be as fast as possible, both with attacks and movement speed. Then I'd look for damage increases. This is about burning things down as fast as possible. So look for lightning damage, attack speed, critical strike damage, lightning critical strike damage, damage to stunned enemies, damage to close enemies, anything like that is really, really useful. And then I'd go for mana reduction, cooldown reduction. That's really good for your ultimate. And then ranks. You want ranks of the skills you're using, ranks of ball lightning, extra ranks of charge bolts or arc clash. I've ended up with extra ranks of glass cannon, which is really helpful. Even the passives are really helpful. I'm sitting right now on like 7 out of 5 arc clash, 7 out of 5 ball lightning. All this stuff adds so much more to your damage. And then if you want to play more defensively, you can take barrier reduction, barrier generation. I've been playing this super offensively throughout all the nightmare dungeons with no issues. Once you hit tier 4, you're probably going to start want to add defensives though. So barrier generation and damage reduction from close enemies, things like that are really, really helpful. Okay, next up, the uniques. There are 3 uniques you want to start looking for, and they are, number 1, the Staff of Lam-Asen, I don't know. This makes your charge bolt piercing at the cost of 30 to 40% of its damage. Not everyone likes this. You lose some of your damage, a lot of your damage, but your charge bolts release 5 bolts on the ground per cast. And with this unique, they'll be hitting everything in front of you. And we have so much that procs more charged bolts. If they're spreading and hitting everything, it all adds up and you get over that damage loss. So I really like it. And then probably my favorite unique in the game is the Raiments of the Infinite. This changes your teleport so that when you teleport, it pulls everything in and stuns enemies around you. And everywhere in this build, we're looking for more stun damage. There's stuff that procs off of stuns. When we get to the Paragon Board, we're going a lot deep into damage, increased damage to stunned enemies. So this is absolutely huge. Then finally, I would go for Esu's Heirloom. These are feat. This gives you a flat movement speed, other movement speed buffs, and it gives you the main thing. Crit strike is increased by 1% of your movement speed. This is why we hunt for so much movement speed in the stats. So yeah, don't think when you take a movement speed stat over something that does damage that you're missing out on damage, because you are getting more damage because you're getting it from this unique. Okay, onto the aspects. So a ton of our damage comes from ball lightning. So the number 1 aspect you want to be looking for is the gravitational aspect. This took so long for me to drop. It comes from it drops on a random legendary. So you just got to find it. You just got to keep farming legendaries until you find it. This turns ball lightning, instead of it shooting out in one direction, it will spin around you. Then we go for aspect of static cling. This lets charge bolts have a chance to go towards the enemy and last 300% longer. And the longer they're out, the more chance they have proccing more lightning damage, which is huge. Next, aspect of the protector is really good. Damage an elite enemy grants you a barrier, absorbing damage. We're going to be teleported into packs of like 3 to 4 elites, so this is really, really helpful to just keep you going for longer, really. The next big one is aspect of retribution. Distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned. This is okay, but the next bit also gives increased damage to stunned enemies. This build is all about stunned enemies, so this is fundamentally one of the best aspects you can get. Next, the last one I'd look for is the Wind Striker mobility aspect. Crit strike grants a % movement speed increase. You know, so movement speed increases our crit, and then crit increases our movement speed. It just keeps the ball rolling. The gotta go fast keeps going faster. This is great. These are the ones I'd really be looking for. These are what I would say are the key aspects. There's other ones like overwhelming currents, stable aspect, things like that are quite good, but these are the ones I'd really go for first. And then you can fill the gaps with things like the more barrier stuff. More synergy with barriers is always really good. More defensives, reduced damage from close enemies. Things like that are really helpful. Okay, then onto the enchantments. So the first enchantment is enchanting Ball Lightning. So this is you're gonna have at least one ball spinning around you at all times. Generally, try and keep that up because it just does so much damage. It stuns. It's just huge. And then by enchanting it, it also increases our damage based on our attack speed, which you should have a lot of. So it just complements the build so well. Then we take Charged Bolts, which lets us do 25% increased damage to stunned enemies. And by enchanting it, there's stunning an enemy, there's a 40% chance to release 3 Charged Bolts. So you see all these things we're building up to stun more, the Arc Clash, the ball, all this stuff. Every time you do stun, there's a 40% chance to get 3 bolts. They spread, they crit, they cause more combos, they cause more stuns, they cause more damage, and it's just amazing. And you might find while you're leveling that Ball Lightning isn't worth it. If it's not spinning around you, it's too much mana and you're not getting the full use out of it. You can take Fireball here, 1 point in Fireball, and then take in Fireball. Enchantment, when you take something down, it blows up, which is really useful. So yeah, you could do that instead if you want. Okay, now onto the big detail, the skill tree. So the skill tree, we start off at level 1, we start taking Arc Clash, and you want to max this out. It does good damage. It's been nerfed. It still does pretty good damage. The beauty of Arc Clash is we're going to be out of mana a lot, and if you hit with 10 times, this stuns, which is great. Then we go here. If we crit, we hit again. Perfect. We're going to be critting a lot. Then we go into this, which gives us movement speed, which is amazing because we want as much movement speed as possible. Then we go down here and we take the big one, Charged Bolts. This is 5 bolts in front of us. You take 5 out of 5 here. I've got some gear which gives me an extra 2 points in here, but you want a 5 out of 5 this. And then we go here, hitting the same enemy 3 times with the same cast, releases a Nova. Charge Bolts are going to be going off all the time, so this is really helpful. And then here, Charge Bolt deals 25% increased damage to stunned enemies. Perfect for this build because it's all about having stunned enemies in front of us. Then we move down and you want to take Teleport. This is amazing. You don't want to put any more points in that personally. You just want to be able to teleport. The unique will do the rest. Then we go into here. Teleport's cooldown is reduced per enemy hit. You're going to be hitting a lot of enemies, which means you can teleport more, you get more movement. And then I take this, you get 30% damage reduction after teleporting. You're teleporting into the middle of loads of elites. You kind of need this. It's very helpful. Then Glass Cannon, this is huge. I've got it 6 out of 3 because I've got certain gear. You know, 3 things of this comes from gear, but you want a 3 out of 3 this. This is a Zergy build. You want as much damage as possible. Okay, then you want to take Ice Armor. This is really helpful. Ice Armor, you pop it on cooldown. You pop it just before jumping into a big pack of enemies. You use it on cooldown on bosses. And then the big one here is Ice Armor. When it is active, your mana regeneration is increased by 25%. Huge. I personally didn't take a third one here, but you can. I just dropped a point into there. Some people mix this with Frost Nova. I've seen some people use Frost Nova with this build, in which case, you know, the increase to vulnerable would be helpful, but yeah, I don't use it. So on to the next bit. This is the big one, the passives. You want to use 1 point in there to unlock these 2, and then you want to max out this one. Using a cooldown grants 30% of your max life as a barrier. More barriers. We have a lot of synergy with barriers. So that's really helpful. And then every time you use mana, you gain damage reduction, more defense. It's really important to have these defensives. Okay, moving down, we get to the good one. I've got points in all these from gear, but you don't take any of these manually. This is the one you do want, Ball Lightning. You want a 5 out of 5 Ball Lightning. Discharge Ball Lightning, moves forward, zapping enemies, but it doesn't because it'll be spinning around us. Okay, then we take the modifier, which increases damage based on your attack speed, which should already be high, which is great. Great synergy on that. And then after hitting 50 times with Ball Lightning, your next cast stuns enemies. And you're going to have multiple Ball Lightnings. When you pop the big ultimate as well, you're going to have a ton of Ball Lightnings. So this is really good. Then we go into some electric passives. So you use 1 point here to unlock the next ones. Every time you stun an enemy, you deal damage. You're going to be stunning them a hell of a lot. So yeah, I had 3 out of 3 this. And then we move down to Unstable Currents. This is your big ultimate ability. Absolutely huge. This is when this comes on, you are just going to dominate every single thing on the screen. You take the modifier, which gives you an increased attack speed of 25%. And then you take this one. While it's active, Crackle Energy consumes no charges and continuously pulses. You can take more Crackle Energy if you want. I personally take a little bit here and there with the extra points you get from the Renowned, but it's nice, but I don't feel like it does a hell of a lot of damage. Then we go to the big passives. I've maxed this out completely. Hitting them with shock resets increases your crit strike by 3. Huge. Enemies deal 15% less damage after being critically struck. That's going to happen a lot. And crits with shock increase your movement speed by 9%. Amazing. And then finally, shock skills have a 9% chance to stun enemies. it all just works so well and synergizes with the build so well. I put a full 12 points here, and I'd recommend that. And then down to the final bit, if you're going all in with Crackling Energy, like if you want to take lots of Crackling Energy, it does work with this build. You're going to be moving a lot. You're going to be zapping things a lot. You're going to want that passive damage. If you can get it to work and want to try it, I would take this. Personally, I don't feel like I take enough Crackling Energy to really justify using the big passive, so I would go with this one. Close enemies take 10% increased damage from shock skills. That's huge. And then deal 20% less damage to you, keeps you alive more. Crit strikes increase these bonuses by 25% for 3 seconds. We're going to be critting a lot, so it kind of works. It's not huge, so I can definitely justify if you want to use this and want to go all in on the Crackling Energy, but personally I don't. Now if you're leveling with this, I would still follow this tree like I've just explained it. The only thing differently is you might not get the full benefit of charged bolts without the unique, and you might need more AoE damage, in which case I'd probably take chain lightning. So I would personally drop off ball lightning for chain lightning while leveling. So I would have this as a close-up move, and then I'd have chain lightning for the AoE. That's how I'd do it differently. Yeah, the 7 points I think it is we put into ball lightning, I would just move and put them into chain lightning just to give you AoE while leveling. And then once you get the glyph of gravitational, whatever it is, that lets you have the ball spin around you, I'd move them all into the ball. But that's how I do it while leveling. Other than that, I'd keep it pretty much exactly the same. Okay, onto the Paragon board. So once you hit 50, you start gaining Paragon points and you can start traveling along this board. Once you get to the end of one board, you open a gate, and then you attach another board, and you have a choice of, if I open the thing here, you'll have a choice of different boards that you can attach, and they all do different things. So the one I would go for first would be Static Surge. So you kind of work your way up, you take the red one, and then you can place a glyph, and I'll talk through glyphs next. So you go up to the red, you place a glyph, and then you move on down, you attach a board. I would attach the Static Surge board first because it has so many things that give extra damage to stunned enemies. So you can see here, 15% damage to stunned enemy plus intelligence. 15% damage to stunned enemies plus intelligence. Where's the next one? Stunning close enemies restores mana. Huge. 15% damage to stunned enemies. It's all about stunned enemies. So I'd go here and start spreading out here and spending points here. Grab the middle to put another glyph in. That'll be your second glyph. And then you can move on to some of the other boards. Ceaseless Conduit is a good board because it gives you increased damage to elites and it's pretty helpful. It also triggers with Crackling Energy if you want to go into that. Searing Heat has a lot of critical strike damage, little cluster multipliers, so that's useful as well. But yeah, start with this one, go into that, and by the time you've got to like attach in the third board, you'll probably know the build as good as me, and you'll be able to make the judgment yourself. But that's where I'd start. I'm not level 100, so I can't sit here and talk about it all the way up to level 100. I can't show you all the way along 5 different boards. But yeah, this will definitely get you started, get you all the way into the 70s, and get you really like into tier 4, get you really into the real end game. For the glyphs, there's not that many. Like with the ice build, there's loads. I've tagged my ice build down below if you want to check that out. There's a lot that really work and synergize well. There's not that many that go as well with the lightning build. I really like control, so it gives you increased damage to crown controlled targets. And then if you get the dexterity around it, that's how the boards work. There's the requirements, and if you hit those requirements, which you should, you get a 20% increased damage to stunned enemies. Phenomenal, especially on the boards we're going to be taking with the increased damage to stunned enemies again. If you're going down the Crackling Energy route, then Charged is really useful. Picking them up grants you increased damage as well. It works even if you're not going down that route because you're going to be picking up Charged Energy as you play this build. Destruction works well. Every 5 dex increases crit strike damage, and then crit strikes increase all damage the enemy takes from you by 2% up to 12%. Again, works into the crit strike build we're making. There's also Electrocute, which if you get 25 dex for that one as well, you get 5% increased chance to crit strike enemies who are stunned. Everything's going to be stunned all the time. So that works really well as well. There's a lot of glyphs and there's a lot of different builds. If you're going to take Ice, you could take Vulnerable from Exploit. There's loads of different ways you can play this, and play it how you want. Take the glyphs that work with how you're playing it, and you might make a few changes to play it, but they're the ones I've been taking. But yeah, that's it. This is the Zeus Lightning Sorcerer build. This is the most fun I've had on Sorcerer so far. I think this is really, really powerful, really fast. You'll burn through content, you'll level super fast, and it's probably my favorite I've tried, and I'm sticking with it all the way into tier 4. Once I get deep into tier 4, I do want to make a really robust end game that's going to have a lot more defensives in. It's going to push you into the really high nightmare dungeons. But yeah, this is it for now. This is huge. This will take you well into the 70s and above. I think it's an amazing build. I love it. I'll also link my ice one down below. A lot of people are enjoying the ice build, so I'll link that down below. And let me know if you want to see any others. I've not really got the fire one to a point where I want to make a video yet, but I'm still working on getting a really good endgame fire build. So that's coming. If there's anything else you want to see, let me know. Subscribe for more, and I'll catch you in the next one.